Good day, everyone. My name is Rich Chester. I'm the Director of Consulting for LPA Software Solutions. And with me today also is John Antonucci, a Senior Business Development Manager with LPA. And together we're going to present to you on the topic of the IBM Cognos Series 7 End of Life, and specifically talk to you about the upgrade to the current technology from IBM for Cognos BI, which is known as Cognos 10. Our agenda today is just to go over the whole end of life from a facts perspective, just what exactly that means. We'll talk to you about the top reasons to actually consider a thoughtful upgrade now, rather than waiting until the actual end of life takes place. We'll talk about the path to Cognos 10 by actually explaining a little bit more about Cognos 10 in general. We'll follow that up with a demonstration. First, we'll talk about some information relative to migrating from the Series 7 products. And actually, we'll find out that we'll talk about both migrations and upgrades and what your options are relative to those. And then we'll talk to you a little bit more about Cognos 10 itself, and we'll show you a demonstration of writing reports in Cognos 10, as well as using Cognos Workspace, which is a dashboarding tool. And then we'll take questions and hopefully provide some answers for as long as we have time during today's session. Please submit questions via the chat in the WebEx technology. We'll get to as many of those questions as we can. Any questions that you submit that we don't happen to have time to get to while we're on air, we will absolutely follow up with you via email and answer your question that way. So hopefully we'll get to as many as you submit, but if you submit extras that we don't have time for, rest assured that we are going to get back to you directly after the webinar with the answers to your questions. So let's move on. Let's talk about the Series 7 end of life. Impromptu was introduced by Cognos roughly in 1992, and before that, PowerPlay, the OLAP technology, was introduced in approximately 1990. The latest version of version 7 was 7.5 that came out in 2010. And by and large, what 7.5 did over 7.4 is 7.5 worked on newer operating systems. So the 7.4 version wouldn't install on the latest and greatest Windows servers, and 7.5 corrected that. It did a few more things, but essentially 7.4 and 7.5 functionally were about the same. On the 13th of this year, IBM announced that as of April 30th, they were no longer going to be able to sell the Series 7.5 software, and that by April 30th of 2018, the software would no longer be supported, not even on a best effort basis through the help desk. So what does that mean? Well, it means impromptu web reports, notice cast, PowerPlay in all of its flavors, visualizer, web services if you were doing programmatic integrations, the remote technical support for all of those products would be through 2016. And then on May 1st, 2016, technical support would only be available on a best effort basis. And as of 2018, the best effort basis would actually end. So the Series 7 products have roughly a runway of 2.5 years, 3 years to until you no longer can get support. Now, that fact introduces certain concerns in most organizations. For a lot of us, the reports we have in Impromptu and PowerPlay are our system of record in terms of reporting from a fiduciary perspective, maybe proving that we have met our compliance relative to Sarbanes-Oxley, and now that software will be unsupported in a relatively short order. The software itself, since it's not being upgraded, there is no more maintenance on the 7.5 version, for example. All of the other software that it depends on that sort of works around it, like LDAPs, like operating systems, like databases, well, they're all continuing to move forward. This technology is stopped. Those are moving forward, and eventually potentially within the next 2.5 years, we're going to find that the number of supported environments in which this tool can run will be rather limited, if perhaps, I guess in the worst case, non-existent. So, we need to consider that the other technologies that we use, whether those are databases or authentication sources or whatever, we're going to want to stay current on those. And this software might hold us back in terms of moving forward in that way. In terms of functionality of the Series 7 products, the functionality, again, is stagnant. It's essentially functionality that was invented in the early 90s and has not changed dramatically from a functional perspective for at least the last 5 years. However, the need for innovation, the need for new capabilities, the need to enable end users to create reports and analyses, and the types of reports and analyses they need to create has not stagnated, right? New innovations are a pretty common thing, but the Series 7 platform is not going to be able to support those because it is hard to innovate with discontinued software. Also, talent for this technology is already somewhat scarce, as you can imagine, with it now being officially ending by the middle of 2018. That talent will continue to dwindle as far as availability in the marketplace. So getting folks in who can manage it, who can administer it, who can write reports using those technologies, who can create new cubes using that technology and so on, will be a limiting factor for us if we stay on it without making a plan to move forward.
And if those reasons aren't enough, consider for a moment really the age of the technologies involved. So, this slide shows and compares and contrasts the client-based tools that were really part of the 1990s, which is represented by Impromptu. And on the right-hand side of the slide are current technologies and that are being enhanced actively today. So if you look at some of the things on the left-hand side of the slate here, you have things like a flip phone, a Walkman, a camera, a client-based PC, and a spreadsheet. And today, all of that functionality is incorporated in one device, and really the power of business analytics tools today is dramatically different, delivered through web browsers. Put another way, if Impromptu was your daughter, she would be a senior in college today. Consider that for a moment.
So hopefully we've given you food for thought on why, as a current Series 7 user, you want to be considering moving sooner rather than later to the newer technology from IBM called Cognos 10. Now, what I'd like to do is take you through Cognos 10 and give you a notion of what it is and what it means. So we're suggesting you abandon something that you have, that you're used to, that you know, and move forward into something new. There ought to be some pretty good reasons for doing that beyond this end of life, and that's kind of what we'd like to chat with you about now. So business intelligence from IBM has always been about a complete view of your business. But in terms of how you visualize your data, right, lots changed since 1990. One of the powerful things in the Cognos 10 platform is the ability to create truly stunning dashboards and reports by the incorporation of many, many different chart types. Now, the Cognos products actually come in Cognos 10 with two different ways to chart. One of them gives you your standard charts, your bar charts, your line charts, your pie charts. The other one, called RAVE Visualizations, and RAVE is the Rapidly Adaptive Visualization Engine. RAVE Visualizations give you a plethora of downloadable new chart types that are very visually appealing, but also extensible, the E in RAVE. Extensible in that you can actually roll your own chart. If you have data that is best expressed in a way that is, let's say, non-standard, a pie chart just doesn't do it, but perhaps a clustered bubble chart does, or perhaps a special type of line chart with a type of axis that is maybe not supported by your run-of-the-mill charts. That is what the visualizations are for. So with the Cognos 10 environment, you not only get a set of standard charts that are quite handy and useful in and of their own right, you also get access to a downloadable collection of Rave-based visualizations to express your data, and a free tool where you can actually create your own visualization that is custom to the data you would like to express. With Business Intelligence in Cognos 10, you can leverage data across any number of data sources. You can mix and match data from different database vendors, from different formats. There are multiple OLAP technologies that are part of the Cognos 10 world, including, as it turns out, PowerCubes, which as Series 7 customers you are likely very familiar with, in addition to new cube technologies like dynamic cubes, as well as access to cube technologies from other vendors. With this platform, you can express data in such a way as to provide new insights, and you can do this by empowering your end users to leverage the tools in a self-service fashion. One of the demos I'm going to do is I'm going to show you self-service from the point of view of writing reports using one of the tools that comes with Cognos 10 called Cognos Workspace Advanced, which is the business end user tool that for all intents and purposes replaces both the PowerPlay authoring tool and the impromptu authoring tool. So I'll show you how to write reports using that tool as part of the demonstration. You can validate analyses by leveraging predictive information in the Cognos 10 stack using IBM SPSS Modeler to do predictive analytics and then express those predictions in your business intelligence. And so you can not only gain insights by looking through the BI prism, you can also then validate those insights by looking through the predictive analytics prism. The whole goal of business intelligence is to enable you to take your data, organize it so that you can analyze it, and via those analyses, turn your data into actionable information. And again, data across sources is a pretty common thing. Almost none of us have one system in which our data resides. A lot of us have our Salesforce information for leads and prospects going into something like salesforce.com. We have our financial systems are usually from a system that we've purchased from someone. We have inventory systems, we have shop floor control systems, we have PLCs running those systems on our shop floors, and all of that data, big or regular, if you'll allow me to use that term, big data as well as standard row and column type data, all of that needs to be incorporated into the analyses that we do today. Cognos 10 as a platform is already regular and big data enabled, as well as has the ability to go across those data sources in a seamless way so that I can write reports and analyses that cross that data without the author even being aware that it's happening. And that's through the use of metadata and a very, very powerful query engine that lives behind all of the reporting tools that are part of the Cognos 10 stack. And then in terms of delivery of data, you can deliver data through a standard browser. You can deliver data to a browser on a mobile device, but there are also native applications on the iOS and Android platforms that allow you to navigate and run reports while connected to your Cognos server. And then there is a tool called an active report, which is something that you can author and generate with the Cognos 10 platform that will actually give you an interactive business intelligence environment that you can use in a disconnected fashion, where you can respond to prompts and look at your data live, but not be connected to any network. And you can do that again on your PC or on your iOS or Android device. So make sense of all the data from all your data sources, create analyses that provide insights by using compelling visualizations using the chart engine and the Rave adaptive engine, and then present that data, distribute that data to all of your end users who need it, both inside your company as well as external partners, in any way that makes sense for them. Paper, mobile, connected, disconnected. One of the big pieces of Cognos 10 that becomes a launching pad for most users is this tool called Cognos Workspace. Cognos Workspace is intended to be an end-user tool that allows those users to create dashboards that are unique to their needs. No longer do we have one dashboard fits all kinds of restrictions where information technology groups create a dashboard and it is sort of the least common denominator. It serves everybody in some way but doesn't serve anybody in a complete way. Moving away from centralized management of dashboards and presentation of data is a big, big theme in the business intelligence world at the moment. Cognos Workspace puts the power in the hands of the consumer of data and gives them the ability to assemble objects from your library of reports and put them into a multi-tab dashboard so that they can optimally view all of the analyses and information they need to make decisions day to day. They can also change that at any time that they need to, and they don't need to go to any centralized organization to be able to make the changes that they need. They can incorporate new data. They can actually change the format that the data is expressed in. And if you give them permissions to, they can even author new analyses that fit their needs specifically. If you enable them to use Cognos Workspace Advanced, which is accessible via this launching pad, this Cognos Workspace view. So I will be authoring a report during our demonstration, and then I will be bringing up a workspace and showing you how that works, and then I will take questions after that demonstration. The compelling visuals is a pretty common theme when we talk to people about Cognos 10. Coming from any number of different competing business intelligence products, most of them have the tabular data thing down pat. They can do lists, they can do crosstabs, and certainly the Cognos 10 platform can also do lists and crosstabs in a very simple and straightforward way. However, the visualizations, the presenting data, giving you a picture in which you can draw inferences that you can simply not draw from looking at a crosstab or a list, is the compelling visual part of Cognos 10. On the bottom of this, you'll see a number of samples of the visualizations that are available for you to download and add to your Cognos 10 environment. So the analyticszone.com website, it's an IBM website that you can log into, is a place where folks can collaborate on the creation of new compelling visuals using that Rave engine and that visualization customizer tool. It's also where you'd go to download that customizer tool, as well as download any of those, let's call them crowdsourced visualizations, and add them to your Cognos 10 stack. And so a bunch of those visualizations are shown in the little chiclets at the bottom of this slide for you to see. Now you have your workspace, you see something compelling, and you would like to explore it further. That's the launchpad part that I mentioned of the Cognos Workspace. So it's not just a presenter, it's not just a way for you to see data, but from there you can launch into doing further analysis of the data you've seen, answering the second and third level questions that the data might present to you. Launching into other tools, as well as using the data you see as the launch for you to do secondary analyses. So that's part of this whole Cognos Workspace platform approach. Again, online exploration of data, offline exploration of data via my browser on my laptop, via the browser on my mobile device, via the native applications for iOS and Android. That's the power of analytics in terms of the data I need, when I need it, in a way I can consume it, that the Cognos 10 platform brings to bear. The Cognos 10 platform goes beyond standard, let me read it from a database capabilities. It is a current generation tool that takes copious advantage of the server it runs on. In-memory performance of OLED, for example, with Cognos dynamic cubes. In-memory performance for reading even relational data from a database in the fact that it uses caching, intelligent caching, to enable reports to run faster for end users. A consistent view of your data across all types of data access through a robust and powerful metadata layer. Ultimately, with the ability for IT to create bulletproof access to data and your end users to create analyses and visualizations that fit their needs, your total cost of ownership when you move forward with a Cognos 10 platform investment is much lower than historically true for business intelligence like the Series 7 products. So move forward and get new features and functionalities, get compelling graphics capabilities, get online and offline access to your data, and lower your total cost of ownership. That's the power of moving from Series 7 to Cognos 10. So how do I get there? Reasonable question. Whenever you're moving from technology to technology, you essentially are either going to migrate or upgrade or potentially do both. Migrate technically means I am going to replicate the applications I have in Technology 1 in Technology 2. That replication might be via a set of tools, or that replication might be by rewriting, essentially revisiting your current applications, understanding what is and isn't used, right? Understanding what deficiencies it has, and then leveraging the new product using a best practices approach that's specific to that new product, and building those applications so that they are on the new platform, address the deficiencies, and contain only the things that people are actually using, as opposed to the original vision for the application, which could have been written a number of years ago. And just like BI technologies have changed, so has your business. And what was true 5 years ago, 8 years ago, when you might have envisioned these applications that you're migrating, is maybe not true today. And so it's time to revisit whenever you migrate. Upgrade specifically means I am using a newer version of the same product. In the case of migrating from Series 7 to Cognos 10, you actually will have a mix of both techniques, both migrate and upgrade. For example, the impromptu tool going to the Cognos Workspace Advanced tool is a migration. And there are some tools that will help facilitate that migration. But then we get back into this discussion of, do I actually use the tools and replicate exactly what I have? Or do I leverage the new tool in a best practices way and build what I need for my current business and what I forecast for the future, as opposed to replicate what I had? On the other hand, Series 7 Transformer has a migration path directly to Cognos 10 Transformer. Because PowerCubes, for all that the Series 7 version of PowerCubes is ending, the Cognos 10 version of PowerCubes is still an ongoing product that IBM is supporting. And so that's an upgrade. So as we talk to you about your specific Cognos Series 7 to Cognos 10 migration plans, we'll be talking to you about a mix of migration and upgrade options. Now, I will be demonstrating this notion of migration, and I will talk to you a bit about the tools that exist for doing so. This, the ability to convert an impromptu report to a Cognos Workspace Advanced report. So that'll also be part of the demonstration I'll do at the end here. So what's the mapping? Where do you go? What is the equivalent, if you will, tool to on the Series 7 to Cognos 10 roadmap? So your architect models and impromptu catalogs, your metadata from Series 7, they all will migrate to a tool called Framework Manager. and will become framework models and packages, that which is the published version of a framework model. Transformer goes to Transformer, just as Transformer 7 to Transformer 10. Your portal services and your upfront portal will all be now part of the new portal called the Cognos Connection. All of your reports and your report development tools migrate over to primarily Cognos Workspace Advanced, and Report Studio. Notice Cast, analog is now called Event Studio. Web services and Cognos script, the way you automate tasks and activities in the Series 7 space, is replaced by the Cognos 10 software development toolkit. And PowerPlay for Excel is now replaced by a tool called the Cognos Analysis for Excel, or CAFE. Just to give you a flavor for how things map. There's a mapping for virtually every function, and in every case, the mapping encompasses the old functionality plus a bunch of new functionality. So what is LPA's guidance relative to starting this path, making this journey, going down this road? Well, our guidance is start now. 2.5 years does feel like it's a long time. However, the fact is your investment in Series 7 could be rather large. The number of applications you've built, the business processes that you've built around the use of those applications, all could be impacted by moving to the new Cognos 10 platform. So we need to take an inventory. What do you have? And more importantly, what is being used? Because very often, right, we build a collection of reports, and ultimately people decide on a subset of those as their favorite, most useful reports, and those are the ones that are using. So quite frankly, moving the other ones may not make any sense. And so you really need to get a handle now on the actuals, the things that are honest to goodness being used in your Series 7 environment. So those are the ones that you migrate, and you don't spend precious dollars on migrating things that nobody is using. So don't lift and shift everything, right? Don't do a brute force approach. As you move, right, you need to understand the new features that you're going to leverage. And you're going to need to consider how your business processes could be improved relative to using the new features and functions, right? Perhaps you don't have mobile. Perhaps you don't have, maybe you are just using Impromptu and you don't use PowerPlay, so you're not using OLAP. You've got, by and large, web-based tools in the new tool, not client-based tools for authoring. And that's going to make a difference in behavior, or maybe a difference in education. And all of that needs to be planned. Thoughtfully moving applications now is certainly something to give a lot of thought to. New projects really should be done in the new tool. At this point, continuing to do development investments in the Series 7 tools, in LPA's opinion, is mostly to be avoided. Now, everybody's situation is different, and we are happy to chat with you about your specific situation and give you some guidance that's unique to you. But in general, our guidance is new stuff in the new platform. And then you need to thoughtfully migrate your existing ones over the next 2.5 years. In other words, it's not plan now and in 2018 move. Our guidance is start the move now. New stuff in the new platform, and then start to plan and migrate your existing Series 7 applications to Cognos, so that by the end of life of Series 7 in April of 2018, you're off, you're done, you have moved, right? Moving now means that you're not going to ultimately pay maintenance on the Series 7 when you're done. Why pay maintenance on a product that isn't being maintained, quite frankly? The only reason you would is to keep access to the best effort support after April of next year. Why not move off of Series 7 and pay maintenance on a product that's actually actively being enhanced? So that's some fundamental, let's call it basic guidance. What we would obviously need to do to help you specifically is talk with you, understand your situation, understand the size of your migration effort, understand how it impacts your business, and help you come up with a better plan. Fundamentally, you need to answer the question, why move now? And LPA can help you with that.
So for many of you in the audience, you'll be thinking about what are my license constraints and considerations. So there are a number of defined trade-up paths between Series 7 and IBM Cognos 10.2. There are also ad hoc ways of moving your products forward to the right set of capabilities that are included in 10.2. These migrations can be complicated, as represented by the chart down below, and really are best explored in a one-to-one conversation. Every customer will have a different starting point and also a different place where they want to end up in terms of adopting capabilities that are included in the newest software. So as a follow-up to this webinar, we would be happy to have a phone conversation or a face-to-face conversation with anyone that would like to explore the migration path moving forward as far as licenses are concerned. I think the key point is that in the meantime, if your plans are not to move immediately, to continue to pay your software renewal with IBM, which will provide you with the capability of trading up to these new capabilities and also allowing you to run both your old environment and your new environment side by side until you're ready to cut over.
And that's an important point, John. As you do this thoughtful move of applications to Cognos 10, your Cognos Series 7 will still be up for the applications that have not moved. So, having in the back of your head that you will have a point in time where you are running both is an important consideration.
So how can LPA help? We can help in a number of ways. We can provide a free migration analysis, which would be a conversation about your specific goals and needs in terms of the size of the Series 7 footprint you have today and where you would like to go with it, including an analysis of what new features and capabilities you might want to consider moving forward. We would be happy to work with you on a free licensing analysis. This would be to understand your current footprint in terms of Series 7 licenses and how you can trade up or migrate to the capabilities that you need. LPA has a number of webinars, a complete webinar library that would help you understand some of the new features and functionality of Cognos 10.2 and how to take advantage of this. It would include things like OLAP strategy, different capabilities around workspace and workspace advanced visualizations. So you can start getting educated on new functionality and how that might be incorporated into moving your solution forward into the most compelling set of capabilities for your internal or external clients. Again, we're happy to meet with you on a one-on-one basis to discuss your specific needs. We also have a billable engagement where we can spend a day or a day and a half with your organization to really come up with a solid migration roadmap where we will do a deep dive on your current content, understand what really needs to be migrated, and then be able to provide you with an effort estimate on what it's going to take to get there, and then figure out the distribution of labor here based on your resource availability and resources that LPA might be able to provide. And finally, we've been working with a number of clients already to do some of these migrations. We've come up with a very solid set of migration steps and possibilities, and we have developed an internal capability to do bulk report conversion, which can be done in-house at LPA, basically on an outsourced basis and returned to your organization. So we can convert your old content to new Cognos 10 content seamlessly and inexpensively.
Okay, so now the long-awaited demonstration. So I'm going to jump over to my PC here. And first thing I'm going to do is I've got a little VM running over on that PC. And what I want to do is talk you through the migration tools that migrate Series 7 to Cognos 10 content. Now, the migration tools, as you remember, this is a product 1 to product 2. approach, and migration tools, by their very nature, in general, will convert some percentage of your functionality automatically, and they convert it in a way that is not always necessarily the best practice way for the new technology. So it's sort of a move it and it'll work for the most part, but it won't be necessarily a foundation on which to build because it doesn't reflect the best practices of product two. And that's sort of true with the migration tools that exist for Series 7 to Cognos 10 for things like catalogs, impromptu reports, and so on. Those tools, which by the way only work with the version of Cognos 10 called Cognos 10.1.1. And that version, by the way, is supported through the middle of the 2016. So I believe it's through April of 2016. Migration tools let you pave the cow path, which may not be the best business decision there is. But these tools do exist. The current version of Cognos is 10.2.2. So the tools were only supported by Cognos through 10.1.1. 10.1.1 is only supported by Cognos through April of 2016. And if you wanted to use the tools to get to the current version of Cognos 10, you would actually have to install a 10.1.1 server on which to use the tools and then move the content from 10.1.1 to your 10.2.2 server. So I guess what I'm saying is there are a number of issues, concerns relative to using these migration tools, but I want to talk to you about them anyway from the point of view of a complete conversation today. I'm going to open up Impromptu Administrator and attach to a catalog, and I'm going to talk to you about the migration of that through the tools. So Impromptu Administrator is how I manage my metadata. In addition, I can also write reports in it. I can go ahead and I can open a catalog called Go Sales. And the Go Sales catalog gives me access to a bunch of data. And there's a set of folders in there that have a bunch of data in them that I can work with, I can edit, I can customize. And this is what gives me access to my data assets in my company, is my catalog. And you probably all knew that because you're all Series 7 folks. The reason I'm showing you this is because what I want to show you is after running the migration tools on it, what you will get is something called a framework model. So let me bring up Framework Manager and show you the converted Series 7 model. So this is probably a tool you haven't had a chance to see yet as Series 7 customers. This is what replaces Impromptu Administrator for managing your metadata. So if I open this model, and I know I went fast, but you might recall these folders in Impromptu. And when I opened up country, there were objects in here that I could add to my report. And in here I can edit those things, and I can change those things, and I can manage my metadata, and I can expose data assets from my organization to my report authors and also my report consumers. So this would normally be something centralized. Metadata, one version of the truth equals one version of metadata by and large. And this is the tool you'd use to manage it. And then you would publish access to the data described by this metadata to your report authors. But when you use the tools, your catalog becomes a framework model. And ultimately, your catalog view of the world is basically unchanged for use in the new tools. However, this approach, this convert my catalog so it looks like a catalog, is not considered the best practice approach to metadata in Cognos 10. So back to the should I migrate using tools question, it comes down to am I migrating the catalog to make it easy to migrate my existing stuff? And I'm going to create a new framework model that uses best practices for my new endeavors where I'm going to grow and I'm going to leverage the features and functions of Cognos 10. If my intention is to actually use this as my starting point, I would advise that a converted catalog is not a good starting point for growth. But it could be a great way to easily move your existing assets to Cognos 10 and potentially provide, let's say, a bridging of where the metadata looks essentially the same to your report authors, so they're not learning new metadata and a new authoring tool. So something to think about there. But that's the notion of using the migration tools for the catalog. Now, also in Impromptu, there are a collection of reports that were part of the samples. So you probably guessed that I used the samples to run the migration tools on. And I'm not going to show you the Impromptu reports. I'm actually going to jump into what replaces upfront, which is this thing called the Cognos Connection Portal. This optional welcome screen gives me access to a collection of content, and here is a collection of migrated Impromptu reports using the tool. And you see it even names them .imr by default. If I go ahead and I run one of these guys, like, I don't know, products.imr. Okay, the tool converts it, creates a working report. That part is true. Generally speaking, the migration tools, however, don't do a great job at preserving format. For example, type here to customize title, probably not what you expected in a production report. But yet, that's what comes over when you migrate these tools. Certainly, the data is here. This is a very simple report that just shows the data that's in my database. Annual product sales came over. It includes, looks like I don't have an image out on my server. Live demo, and these are the kinds of things you deal with when you migrate. Let's see if I can find another one. How about customer satisfaction? So this is a converted one, and this had a bunch of conditional formatting in it to highlight data. And I do promise you that it looked just like this as an IMR. This is not the color scheme, which I would find very distracting if I use this report, was in the source report. And this time a title came over. You see in the other one there was no title, so Cognos left, the migration tools specifically left the title there, the default title there, which is not awesome. But when you use the tools and you convert your IMR reports, they come over and they're quasi-formatted. And again, they're not leveraging the new capabilities in the tool, especially since the migration tools are relative to Cognos 10.1.1, and there have been a bunch of enhancements between 10.1.1 and 10.2.2 that the migration tools couldn't possibly take advantage of. So if you do choose to go the tool route, and again, that's something we can help you in terms of deciding whether it makes sense for some or all of your approach, you would go from Series 7 to 10.1.1, 10.1.1 to 10.2.2, and then you would be current. And in almost every instance in your reports, you're going to have to edit the reports, and you're going to have to address formatting. That may actually be faster than writing the reports from scratch. So again, it may be a viable option, but do remember those migration tools support ends April of next year. So there is a thing to think about relative to timing as well. So that's the impromptu conversion notion and the whole migration tools notion that I wanted to illustrate. So now I'm going to jump back to my PC, and I'm going to do a demo of authoring a report using Cognos Workspace Advanced. So I've launched Cognos Workspace Advanced against a set of metadata that represents data in a database. So it's relational information for my business. I'm using the sample data. I'm going to create a new report. As you can see, with Cognos Workspace Advanced, which is the end user authoring tool, I can create list reports, crosstab reports, chart reports. I'm going to go ahead and start with a crosstab and just show you quickly a crosstab, and then I'll show you how to also add a chart to this report. So I'm going to do some information about sales, and I'm going to do sales by year. So I'm going to grab year and drag it over as the columns in my crosstab. Oops, better sort those guys because I would prefer to have my years in ascending order. There we go. And I will drop in revenue as the measure I would like to analyze. And I'm going to break that data down by the products I sell. I organize my products into product lines and product types. And I'm going to actually keep this a summary because crosstabs are great for summary things. if I drop actual products in here, it will give me a ton of data. Okay. If I want to, I can limit the data in this report to just a couple of the product lines, which is what I will do. So I'm going to do camping and golf equipment only on this report. And I may be only interested in orders that were submitted via the web. So I'm going to edit my report and add a filter here on just web-based data. Okay? Then I'm going to go ahead to my toolbox and I'm going to add a chart to this report. You know what? I'm going to lay out my page first. So there's a page layout button here, and I'm going to do I'm going to lay out my page that way. So here I'll have my crosstab, and here I'll have my chart. So I'll drop my chart into here. Up will come a chart wizard. This is the basic library of charts you heard me reference earlier. Columns, lines, bars, gauge charts, pie charts, and so on. I'll do a quick column chart just to get a column chart on. And what are we doing on time? I may try to drop a visualization on here as well. So let me just drop on. In this chart, I'm going to actually analyze gross profit. And I'm going to break gross profit down by region. So I'll get a bar per region. And again, I'm going to look at that over time. So I'm going to drop year in my category. And if I scroll down, you'll be able to see my years. Oh, I'm lucky they actually sorted for me in this case. So there you have it. I've got an analysis written that shows me revenue and gross profit analysis in two forms, a crosstab and a chart. And this is the kind of thing that end users would use instead of using impromptu. Now, it's also instead of using PowerPlay Client, because not only could I write reports like this with this tool from metadata that represents relational data, data that is coming from my database directly, I could also use this tool to write reports from my cubes, my PowerCubes, or any other cubing technology you happen to have. If you have SQL Server databases and you have SQL Server analysis services, no reason you couldn't use those cubes in this tool either. But it's still this drag it, drop it, see my data as I go perspective that leverages the metadata that was published from a framework model that represents the data assets in your organization. So that's Cognos Workspace Advanced. If I remove the chart and I just quickly drop in a visualization, so you can see that's a different library. And I have a pretty extensive library of visualizations out here. I'm going to drop on one that I sort of like called a packed bubble. And they work essentially the same way from me as an author. I go ahead and I drop in some data like gross profit. And I'll break that down by region and by year. So there's my bubbles for region. So I'll get different colored bubbles for each region. And then I can break my colors down by year. Okay. So these advanced visualizations are not rocket science. They're drag it, drop it objects, just like the charts are. It's just that they can express data in a custom way for you, as opposed to the chart library, which doesn't have the E, the extensible part, like the rave ending in E does. So that's a notion of writing reports in the Cognos 10 world, so that you can compare to how you would write reports in impromptu and PowerPlay in the Series 7 world. So that's one part. And then the last part of my demo, if I can quickly do it for you, is this Cognos Workspace tool. So this is a workspace that I've opened. Workspace equals dashboard for most of us. The workspace terminology is an IBM terminology. Each of these analyses is something that I dragged in because for me, I need this to do my job. This is optimized for me. These are the things I want to see on a routine basis or on a daily basis when I log into Cognos and look at my data, right? Now, it could be that this data is interesting to me, and when I select this widget on my dashboard. It's interesting to me, but it's not in a form that is as useful to me perhaps as it could be. So I'm going to change the form of this data and change it to a tabular, as it turns out, format. So I'm going to go with a table, and I'll go with a crosstab, and I'm going to have it redisplay that data for me in a crosstab. So you see, the workspace is not static. Now, you can make the workspace static for some folks. In other words, you can have security access to workspace where it's a look but don't touch on that workspace. There's an intermediate level of access you can give people for workspaces that allows them to do some interactive. And then you can give end users the ability to do everything, author, update, and the whole 9 yards. So there's security knobs you can twist in Cognos 10 in terms of exactly what functionality you provide people in terms of access to workspaces. But the notion with a workspace is that I can optimize it, if you will, tailor it to meet. I can create a private copy that's highly tailored of centrally managed workspaces, or you could have centrally managed workspaces that can't be updated by end users. So there's lots and lots of security options here, but this might be where I land every day. This I can actually set to be my landing page when I log into the Cognos connection. And I can access this thing by my browser like I'm doing now, or on my mobile device. So that's a quick introduction to a couple of the things that I think that you would be particularly interested in relative to moving from Series 7 to Cognos 10. What is this whole visualization, seeing my data in unique and clever ways that give me new insights, and the launching pad notion behind the workspaces? And if I have to write reports, what's the tool look like for end users? And that's the demonstration I have planned. So at this point, why don't we go ahead and take a look at some of the questions that you've submitted. So the first question may have been submitted before I said it, but the question is, are the migration tools available for Cognos 10.2.2? No. So the migration tool set, Cognos had from the beginning of Cognos 10, and with each release they enhanced it, and it leveraged the new features in that release. As of 10.1.1, they stopped enhancing and supporting the migration tools. So if you're going to use the migration tools, you would need a 10.1.1 implementation where the tools are installed, and then you use the tools and migrate from 7 to 10.1.1. And then you would export that content from the 10.1.1 environment to your final environment, which would be the current release. The current release is technically known as Cognos BI 10.2.2.2, because that last .2 is the current fix pack. The next question in is, you talked about licenses and mentioned that there is trade-ups. Do I need to be on support to trade up my licenses? Hey, John, why don't you answer this one?
So the answer is absolutely yes. In order for you to be able to migrate to the newest technology, you need to be current with your software renewal with IBM. This will allow you to be able to trade up to the capabilities that are that best fit your needs in the new product. And as I mentioned previously, it will also allow you to run your environments side by side for some period of time until you've completely migrated your technology off the old platform to the new one. But if you drop support, you will have issues around reinstituting licenses and expenses associated with that.
Great, thanks. I think this might be the last question we have time for. I'm an impromptu report author, and I use hot files a lot in my analyses. Does Cognos 10 support hot files? It does, but it does it in a very different way. So one of the tools I didn't show you is called Report Studio. Report Studio, in addition to doing everything that Cognos Workspace Advanced does, allows me to actually create queries. It allows me to write very complex data access schemes into my reports. So a hot file is essentially a way to go grab a set of data, filter it, get that subset of data, and then operate again on that subset. In Report Studio, you would create a query that gets that subset of data, and then you would create another query that uses that first query. So the concept of hot files is absolutely supported. The implementation is that it does not actually create the intermediate result. All right, well, unfortunately, I've done it again. I've only had time for a couple of questions. But I want to thank you very much for your kind attention today. Remember that any questions you have submitted, we will absolutely answer via email afterwards. On behalf of my colleague, John Antonucci, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to your participation in our next webinar. Have a great one.